the smartphone business a difficult business at the moment, more difficult than it has been previously. And an indicator here for me is some recent data regarding the iPhone XR, representing nearly half of recent U.S. iPhone purchases ahead of the iPhone 11 launch. We have some pretty cool data from a company called CIRP. They released a new report with estimates for how well each iPhone model sold during Apple's Q3. In addition to the iPhone XR being the most popular phone, they also, in their survey, looked at how frequently or commonly Apple users were engaging with Apple's various services. The iPhone XR represented 48% of Apple's smartphone sales in that particular quarter, which is massive, considering it's a non-flagship, right? It's a non-flagship device. You can see it represented in this graph that Will's showing off. You have like the XS Max, for example. I mean, it sold almost 10x the XS Max. How about that? And the XS, about the same as the XS Max. You combine the two, you're still barely at a quarter of what they sold in iPhone XR department. Of course, this graph also includes older generation iPhone models. People, believe it or not, are still buying iPhone 8s and 8 Plus. And somehow they're buying as many 8s. They're buying more 8s than they are 10s, 10Ss. Like, that's kind of crazy to begin with as well. You know what this tells me, Will? For all the features and amazing things happening in smartphone, OLED displays, performance improvements, camera improvements, the extra camera modules. If the price ain't right, Will, it's price right now that to me seems to be the driving force for people. Was the XR too good for the price, or was it just that people viewed the XR too much like the XS and they just couldn't see the reason for the extra? I can see the difference between an OLED display and a traditional LCD display, but maybe the average customer can't, it turns out. I mean, look at this. Did they look at both in the store? Or did they just say, I need a new iPhone, and they went on the website and they just like, oh, that one looks the same? Fine. Like, does this say more about an iPhone user? And I don't think an iPhone user is necessarily spec chasing. And I think that's kind of what Apple's worried about as far as getting into the competitive mid-range or even lower end of the market. iPhone users, I believe they understand the idea of a newer model, the difference between an 8 and a 10. But beyond that, are they really sensing or feeling the differentiation between that premium one or the R model? Or are they just saying, I need a new iPhone, and they're just seeing the cheaper price? That's fine. That's a new one too. I'll take that one.
There wasn't a big jump between the 10 and the 10S, right?
You mean in terms of features?
Yeah.
Well, you had a camera.
A little bit of a spec bump.
Yeah,
as
you
well.
had a spec bump.
But they looked pretty much the same.
They look the same, absolutely. To a customer, yeah, they look the same. They look the same, absolutely. It's faster, spec bump. You're right. This 10R situation, though, I really think is really interesting data because you believed, at least the word on the street was that the iPhone users are strictly a premium user. They got all the money in the world. $1,000 smartphone, Apple can do it. You see a stat like this and you start to realize maybe they're not. Yeah, there's a lot of brand recognition, brand value. But people it appears based on this data that they got the same value out of having that logo on a lesser spec. That was okay, that still signaled premium enough to them. And this is why I think it's dangerous for Apple. If they go down that food chain to try to attract, say, an Android buyer who's in a much more competitive marketplace with way more things to choose from, do they take their current core customer and just turn them all into mid-range buyers and leave all that profit margin on the table by offering up something more competitive? I think the 10R seems to indicate that. I do think they have to continue to move in that direction. But they got to be careful about doing it from a business perspective to protect those profits associated with the flagship stuff, which is what they used to sell at the same clip as this R model. So if you go back prior to that period, you can see the 8 Plus was the #1 selling device June of 2018 compared to June of 2019. Interestingly enough, it had sold at the time the 10, but at that moment, you only had those two really to choose from. And the 10 at that time occupied a bigger range than, say, the 10S now in the same time period a year later. So things have happened in the marketplace. There's so many variables and factors that come into play. when you think about customer decisions. There's the macroeconomic stuff. Do people have as much disposable income? Are they starting to pinch back? Then we get into the feature talk. Like I said, can you tell the difference between these specs, and is it worthwhile ultimately at the end, given all those factors combined together? Turns out the 10R hit the nail on the head for them, but what did they leave on the table? If they don't launch the 10R, are all those buyers prepared to just spend a little extra on the other one if they didn't have the 10R option? Maybe a few less. Who knows? Now, also, keep in mind, they had a real marketing push around that 10R. You go on the webpage, it'd be like, you could have a 10R for like $200 if you trade in your old phone. Like, they were really trying to move 10Rs.
Even
Leftover
promoting-
LCD panels, who knows?
Yeah, liquid retina. It's
Liquid
like just
retina.
the regular saying of like LCD.
No. Liquid retina.
yeah.
Doesn't that sound high tech? Liquid.
Yeah, I'm sold.
You understand?
Buy one right now.
Yeah.
So do you think the 10R, Apple's going to experiment on other versions of the 10R in the future?
Yeah. They're going to
Like
have
maybe a
another
smaller
R version
display
this
or
time
something?
around, and they're going to sell it again, and they're going to continue to chip away at the premium stuff because people don't have two iPhones. They have one iPhone. And Apple only launched a premium one previously. Of course, the iPhone 6, 7, 8, there was no budget model. Even 10. When the 10 came out, just get the 10 or nothing at all. So anyway, there's another cool part of this particular survey, which looks at Apple services. They determined that 35% of iPhone users were signed up for Apple Music. That's kind of a big number, I guess. 48% were on a paid iCloud plan, which that makes the most sense to me because they really push it from the jump. Try to get your stuff in the cloud and say, hey, you're going to store your photos. It's just all so integrated and easy. Apple Care, not very popular, around 3.6% of users. I guess the whole warranty thing, not what it used to be. People just trust these devices are gonna work. Apple News, I don't think that met people's expectations. 15% of Apple users are using Apple News and Apple TV, and Apple Podcasts were around 30%. That makes sense to me too. They were the OGs in the space, but Apple Podcasts is not paid. So of these services, the only paid one being iCloud, even the Apple News one, I'm not really sure. Are they using the paid version? No, they're probably using the free version. So anyhow, you get an iPhone, you use iPhone services, Apple services. Not such a surprise there, but iPhone 10R, to me, key indicator, people are more cost sensitive now than they used to be, and they're selecting for their cost sensitivity, not necessarily all the features. It's a value. It's a package deal they're looking at.